Out to her on Instagram, and she said, yeah, so a closed mouth don't get fed. Sending love, health, happiness, and prosperity to you watching this video. Welcome or welcome back to my channel. I am Dr. Aisha, a family nurse practitioner, and in this video, I'm going to be telling you all about the DNP and my journey to getting my DNP. So what is a DNP? DNP stands for Doctor of Nursing Practice. It is one of the terminal degrees. It is a doctorate degree or a doctoral degree. It's one of the highest levels of education a nurse can get. Hence the name nursing practice. It is a practice-focused degree, and where nurses who have attained their DNP, they take the latest research and translate it into practice. And this is an alternative to a research-focused degree, which is also known as a PhD. So the DNP degree was created to prepare advanced practice registered nurses to be leaders in clinical practice. So I'm going to tell you how the DNP came about. In 2003, the Institute of Medicine called for a health system transformation through interprofessional, evidence-based care, including expert clinical leadership by nurses. Given the growing complexity of care and strong recommendations by the Institute of Medicine, it was held that the healthcare would benefit from doctorate-educated practitioners. Around this same time, other disciplines such as pharmacy and physical therapy echoed this belief and moved their disciplines to a practice doctorate exit. So with the DNP, you are able to pretty much specialize or tailor your career goals. With this terminal degree, a nurse can get trained as a nurse practitioner, a nurse midwife, a nurse anesthetist, clinical nurse specialist, or an educator, get your DNP in executive leadership, public health, health policy, nursing administration, informatics leadership, educational leadership, professional leadership. So each program or school, the schools are going to have different programs. It just depends on whichever school you decide to go to. And according to the American Association of Colleges of Nursing, only 1.2% of nurses have a doctorate in nursing practice, have a DNP degree. So that's just a little bit about the DNP degree. Now I'm going to tell you about my collegiate journey. And it's a journey because I was definitely not the traditional college student. I didn't take the traditional path. So graduated high school, and it took me 10 years to get my first bachelor's degree. And a bachelor's degree usually takes people 4 years to get. So, long story short, I went to New Orleans to Xavier. Hurricane Katrina came 2 weeks later. Thankfully, I was back home already. I was not down there when Hurricane Katrina hit. And I went to a local school. And for the first couple years in college, I was doing horrible. I just didn't know what to expect. I don't think I was really prepared for college. Anyway, I was failing classes. I eventually ended up going back down to New Orleans. I only stayed there for a semester. I was kicking it too much. I was partying. I was not taking school seriously. And I was failing classes. And that's not funny. It's just is what it is, right? So, came back home, started going to community college, and I was just being real comfortable, right? I was just going to classes. I was taking going to school on a part-time basis, and I was working, still living at home. So I was just pretty much chilling. Finally got my associate's degree, took a year off, worked full-time as a bank teller, and then went back to finish my first bachelor's degree. And I was also waiting tables as well. So finally finished my first bachelor's degree 10 years after I graduated high school. Was it 10 years after? Yeah, it was. It was 10 years after I had graduated high school. It was. Moral of that story is don't compare your journey or your life to anyone else's. Because at the time that I was getting my associate's degree, people were graduating with their bachelor's degrees. And I was kind of sad because I was happy to get my associate's degree because it's like, well, I'm halfway there. But at the same time, I was like comparing myself to like other people who I had went to high school with who were graduating with their bachelor's degree. So you got to run your own race, right? You got to, everybody's journey is different. So anyway, once I graduated from my first bachelor's degree, then it only took me 1 year to get my second bachelor's degree, which was my Bachelor of Science in Nursing. I did an accelerated BSN program. We started in January and we ended in December. And it was the hardest year. It was so hard. And I will link the video here. I've already done a whole video talking about my ABSN experience. So when I was in nursing school, I already knew that I wanted to be a nurse practitioner because I just knew that I didn't want to be working bedside for years on end. Not that you have to work bedside as an RN, but I just knew that I wanted to go higher in nursing. So I was already looking at schools, and I'm the type of person where having the option of getting my doctorate, like I already knew that that's what I wanted to do, because I knew that had I got my master's as a nurse practitioner, having the doctorate option, I just knew that this just would have been something that I wanted to do. And I didn't want to continue to like go back to school, right? Because I didn't have kids at the time, and I knew that I wanted to have kids, and I figured it would be more challenging if I already have this degree, if I already have this job, if I'm already making more money. It would have been harder for me to go back. So that's why I opted to do what's called a BSN to DNP program. So some BSN to DNP programs, they do grant you your master's while you're getting your DNP, and some don't. Mine didn't, and so it was like all or nothing. So I just went for it. So I was only a nurse for about 1.5 years before I started my graduate studies, and I was working in the ER. And I feel like that was a good enough of experience to start on my grad studies. So yeah, working in the ER, it was lovely. I absolutely loved it, and I think it was a pretty good experience because I got to see a lot of stuff. And I think that was a good foundation before starting, because I knew that I was going to be working while I was in school. So I knew that I would have several years of experience by the time I finished and became a nurse practitioner. When I started school, I was working my 3 12-hour shifts full-time as an RN, and then I was going to school full-time. I initially wanted to go to school part-time, but when I got to orientation, there were these other young ladies, and they was like, you need to go full-time so we can all graduate together. So I was like, oh, I'm kind of scared to go full-time. I just didn't know what to expect. I just didn't want it to be too much. Spoke to my advisor. She said, well, you can go full-time, and then, you know, if you change your mind, you can go back to part-time. I'm like, okay, cool. So they convinced me to go full-time, which was a 3-year program, 3-year degree plan. So I was working full-time, and I was going to school full-time, which was 3 classes. And my program was fantastic, and I loved it because it was broken down into 5-week blocks. So it made it more manageable. I would go to school for 5 weeks and have a 1-week break off. Go for 5, 1 off, go for 5, 1 off. Most of my classes were for the whole semester. I would say about half were the whole semester. A lot of them were 10 weeks, and I had like a couple that were 5 weeks, maybe like 1 or 2. So it was cool. I was, you know, working, going to school full time. And then I got pregnant with my first baby. And so she was born in the middle of me going to school. That semester that I had her, I was supposed to start clinical, but I didn't want to because clinical was 180 hours a semester. And mind you, I'm still working full time. So that semester, I opted to go to school on a part-time basis. That way I could start clinical the following year. And what that did is it pushed my graduation date back 1 year. Okay, cool. The time is going to pass anyway, right? So had my daughter in the middle of the semester. She was born in November of 2019. I successfully completed that semester, and then I was off of work for 3 months. Then I went back to work, and then it was like early February when I had went back to work. I'm still working full-time, going to school part-time, taking 2 classes I started taking 2 classes in the fall, and then I was continuing to take 2 classes. So come the next fall 2020, I started clinical. So I got a part-time job because I did not want to be putting too much on myself, working 3/12s and then working like 2 8s, because I would do 2 clinical twice a week, and they would be like 8-hour shifts, because those are like normal clinic hours to match get my 180 hours a week. So it was still like I was working a full-time job, because 24 plus 16, that's still like 40 hours a week. Plus I still had to write papers, I still had to do discussion, I still had like assignments to do, and I still had life. I was a wife, a new mom, so it was still a lot, but more manageable. Mind you, COVID hit right when I went back to work, and I was working in the emergency department at the time. So when I got my part-time job, I had to leave my hospital because my manager, she wouldn't allow me to go part-time. She told me that I had to do night shift. I didn't want to do night shift at the time. I had to leave. So COVID hit, and I was not opposed to leaving because I was in the ER setting, and I couldn't find another part-time ER job at the time. So the part-time job that I found was liver kidney transplant med-surg. I didn't want to do med-surg because I knew that I didn't like med-surg when I was in nursing school. I didn't hate it. I just didn't like it. Didn't want to do it. But at the same time, I had to go where the opportunity was. And it was by the grace of God, like, because I was on the transplant floor, we didn't get COVID patients because everybody who has a transplant is immunocompromised. So we didn't have COVID patients. So it was a blessing in disguise that I got this part-time job. It's not what I want, but it's what I need. And because I would have felt horrible had I, trying to get this COVID money, and I got a baby at home. I have a whole family at home. I did not want to bring COVID back to my baby. So I did not take advantage of any of that COVID money. And, I'm okay with that, because you just got to do what's best for you. At the end of the day, everything is not about money. Yes, we go to work for money, but at the same time, I did not want to put my family in. At that time, we really didn't know much about COVID. So I didn't want to expose them to anything. So thankfully, I never did. So I never took advantage of any of the COVID money. I just worked part-time, and then I continued school on a part-time basis till I graduated. I never paid a preceptor. By the grace of God, I just networked, right? So I was at my old job. I knew this nurse, she was getting her NP, and I asked her where she was on her clinicals. She said, "Oh girl, I'm doing them over here. They'll accept you. Just call and talk to this lady." Call and talk to the lady, accepted me. Fantastic. So I didn't pay for that preceptor, and I was with that preceptor for a few semesters. And then when I was at that site, he always had students, and so I would always be talking to the other students like, "Hey, where you doing your other clinicals at?" Because you just never know. So I found out about another preceptor at that site, and that preceptor, she was thebomb.com. She had over 50 years of nursing experience, because she was a nurse. I think she was a nurse for, I don't know if she was a nurse for 20 or 30 years. And then she had either 20 or 30 years of NP experience. I can't remember which was which. But anyway, she had her own practice. She was thebomb.com. I learned so much from her, and she had a no-nonsense approach. She would tell a student you gotta leave. Like, if she didn't like something you did, if you was unsafe in any way, if you didn't know what you was talking about, if you wasn't in a part of a professional organization, if your resume wasn't on point, like, you had to come correct with her. Love her. So I didn't have to pay her. And then for my pediatric clinical, I used to be a scribe. So I used to be a scribe before nursing school when I was waiting tables and getting my first bachelor's degree. I would still like keep in contact with some of the doctors, like some of the physicians that I used to scribe for in the ER. And so I reached out to one of them, and I was asking him if he knew of anyone where I could, if he knew of any pediatricians where I could do my pediatric clinical. And he was like, oh, I have a pediatric, what do you have? Clinic. Yeah, oh, I have a pediatric clinic. So I was like, oh, okay. He was like, you can do your clinicals there. And so I asked, it was an urgent care clinic. So I asked my program director, was it okay if I did my clinicals there? She said it was okay. So that worked out great. And then my final, I had my women's health preceptor. I reached out to her on Instagram. And I would always reach out like a long time, like a year in advance. And I know some people say don't do that, but I was hearing horror stories of how like students had a hard time getting preceptors and how they were always booked, and they had contracts with certain schools in their local area, so they wouldn't accept students from other schools. So I was reaching out for in advance. So I reached out to her on Instagram, and she said, yeah. So a closed mouth don't get fed. Like, you just gotta do it. You may get told no, but it don't take one yes. So I did my women's health clinical at her private practice, learned so much from her. And then for my final preceptor, I reached out to her on Facebook. I found her through one of the professional organizations' websites. And then I was just doing like Google searches, and I saw her practice. It was on Facebook. Reached out to her. She agreed to precept me. So I never paid for one preceptor. Something that I would do, I would always, it's your approach and it's your delivery. So I would always reach out to them in a message, letting them know my name, where I go to school, how many years of experience that I have. I would like let them know all of that, because I'm essentially asking them to do something for me, and they don't know me. Like, they don't know me at all. But by the grace of God, he just blessed them to bless me, and I'm thankful for them. And something that I always do is whenever I would go to meet them to take them the paperwork that was necessary for my school, I would always like go to Bath and Body Works and get some treats, like some smell goods, and just take it to them, for them, for their office staff, just to show a token of my appreciation. Because everybody don't want donuts. Everybody don't even like donuts, but it's just something a little different, and just to show a token of my appreciation. So that's just a little tidbit on me and my preceptors, because I know I've heard that schools are required to find your preceptors, but I know a lot of students are out here paying a lot of money for their preceptors. And they, on top of paying tuition and everything else, they paying their preceptor. And then there's services that will find you a preceptor, but you have to pay them, and they're getting paid. Like, they're paying hundreds and thousands of dollars to get preceptors. So bless the Lord, I ain't never have to pay for no preceptor. It was challenging. All in all, don't be afraid to ask. You will be told no as far as your clinicals and your preceptor, but you only need one yes, right? You got to reach out in advance, and don't be, you can't be afraid to ask. You just never know, right? It was challenging. You just got to keep going. Like, I didn't stop when I had my first baby, and then I was pregnant. I was 36 weeks pregnant, actually, when I graduated. I will try to link a video, or try to put a video here of me walking across the stage, big and pregnant. getting my DNP because I was determined to graduate, and I actually flew and flew back. And my Braxton Hicks was so bad I had to go to the store and get some magnesium. My Braxton Hicks was bad. And when I was pregnant with my first child, I had my white coat ceremony. So I'll post a picture there as well of me pregnant at the white coat ceremony. So I was pregnant at the white coat ceremony, and then I was pregnant at the graduation. It's okay. I graduated, right? I finished. Your capstone or your scholarly project, final project, schools call it different things. It's the final thing that you have to do. So one of the big differences between a DNP, Doctor of Nursing Practice, and a PhD, Philosophy of Nursing. What is it? PhD stand for? I can't remember. But the PhD is a research based degree, so you have to do what's called a dissertation, whereas you're creating your own research. And that's where you hear people say, oh, I had to write a 150-page paper. That's a dissertation. They're creating research. A DNP, on the other hand, you are not creating any research. You are taking research that has already been done, and you are creating some sort of change, whether it be a change in clinical practice or a change in systems. And so the DNP project shows essentially that you know how to be a change agent. And that's the biggest thing with the DNP. You are going to bring about change, whether it's clinically or on a systems level. You're going to bring about change. The capstone project, it was a very long process. When I went to my orientation before school started, they told us to go ahead and start thinking about what we wanted to do for capstone. And that is some great advice, because if you want to get your DNP, you need to kind of have an idea of what you want to do it on. That way you can start collecting articles and research that's already been done. And so that way, whenever it's time for you to create your project from start, and when you're starting, you already have kind of a baseline of what to go on in articles to use for your project. So it's a very long process, a lot of revisions, a lot of going back and forth with your respective faculty member. I had to go through IRB. Even though I didn't do my project using patients, I still had to go through IRB just to make sure that no one was harmed. And my project ended up being a non-implementation project, because the job that I had, they were taking a very long time in like giving me the okay to do my project there. So in order for me to meet all of the deadlines, I could not implement, which kind of sucked, but I just had a non-implementation project. I didn't get to gather data and do all of my statistical methods and things like that, but I did submit my capstone to the Sigma Nurse repository, and I will link it down below if you are interested in reading on it. It is something that I'm very proud of. Now I work as I'm a family nurse practitioner, but I work in women's health. That is just something that I'm doing right now. I do want to do other things, especially with my DNP, and really your options are limitless. So that's my journey. I hope this video helped you. If it did, be sure you like, comment, and subscribe. What are some more things you all want me to talk about? Please let me know down below in the comments. Let's have a dialogue. And I hope this video helped. Until next time, take care and be blessed.